Good afternoon, everyone. It is Saturday, 1:03 p.m. on April 23rd Pacific time, and that means it's time for another one of Western Liberty Network's Saturday trainings on Zoom. These are available free, and they're almost every Saturday, and it's sponsored by Western Liberty Network. I have a couple of things I'd like to share before we get going here. And the first thing I would like to do is to share the screen, and I'm going to bring up the westernlibertynetwork.org website. Anyone who wants to know what's going on with Western Liberty Network or access training facilities can type in westernlibertynetwork.org, and they'll be redirected to this site. This is our home page. And on the home page at the top, you'll always find what is coming up. And the training that we're doing right now is what was at the front. This will be updated this afternoon for the next training. And then we also have things that we have done. Here we're showing a recent conference that we did in Klamath Falls. Below, this is our annual conference, which we did in Vancouver, Washington. And we have a variety of other things that we have done. This is helpful because there are some training materials available here free of charge. For example, if you go down to the Klamath Falls meeting, you've got a couple of the slideshows that were provided to people who were there. Also, if you click here, you can get the video for one of them. Tom Cox, who I'm pointing to now with my mouse, he did a Zoom training on organizing around local issues, and you can see that video here. You can also just look at the presentations. This provides a summary of the conference. Here, we've got the actual speeches from State Senator Dennis Linthicum, City Councilor Christina Soltis during our annual conference. There are just a lot of really good resources that are available on the home page. If you want more specific training resources, users can click on the training tab, and they will be presented with this page. Here they will be shown the kinds of training that Western Liberty Network provides. And then there are some things you can look at. For example, these are training documents. These are meant to be provided with live training, but they stand on their own as an educational resource. So if you want to, you can click on one you're interested in, and up will come a PDF file that you can copy, download, email, do whatever you want. None of these are copyrighted because we want to make sure the information is disseminated. And so if you want to share these with other activists or your friends, you're certainly welcome to do so. Scroll down a little further and you see our weekly training sessions. These are recorded just as we are recording this session right now. And we have over a year of topics that we have covered during our Saturday training sessions. I provide a lot of the trainings, but not all of them. Here is Andrei Ilyaronov, who was Vladimir Putin's senior economic advisor before he defected, and he was talking about the Ukraine-Russia war. We've got others too that provide training, and it's just a really good resource. Next week, Senator Warner Reschke will be doing a training on what to do during the last few weeks of a local campaign. You might want to tune into that, and that will be up and advertised very soon. If you like what Western Liberty Network does and you think these resources have value, you're always invited to go to the Support WLN page and make a tax-deductible contribution. One-time contribution levels, monthly contribution levels, and all of these are driven by PayPal, so you know that they are secure. And because Western Liberty Network is a 501c3 organization, we do not endorse or oppose any candidates, even the candidates we train ourselves, and we also don't oppose or support any legislation or ballot measure. What we do is we train limited government activists how to do politics, and they are, of course, then free to use the training open to anyone in any way that they like. So with those disclaimers, I'm going to begin the current session. And what we're talking about today are some of the basics of political messaging. I understand that Carrie on the call, that you're a member of the school board, so messaging is really important these days with respect to what you're doing. And if you want to, while I'm speaking, If you have a question or a comment or something you'd like to share as an activist or a school board member, please unmute yourself at any time and chime right in. As I often say, I'm not a wait till the end for questions kind of guy. Chime in with anything you think might be of value. So with respect to messaging, there are 4 basic kinds of messages that a campaign or a candidate can project. The first one is your core message. This is the central message of your campaign. It's the reason for running if you are a candidate, and it's the reason why you are running a ballot measure. It's your core message. The message should be attractive and it should be compelling, expressing a vision for the future. One example that I use in our documents is, we can solve these problems, and I know how. Let's solve them together because our best days are ahead of us. That is a core message. Now that's very general in your race, if you're running, or if you're running for school board, or if you're already on the school board but you're promoting for a policy, your message is going to be more specific. But the idea is that you have a core message that you are projecting. And there may not be just one message. There might be a lot of different messages. And there usually are a lot of different messages. It's good to keep them delineated and put them out there and project them when you think the timing is right. But everything should feed into one central core message, which is the why, the justification for doing anything. Then you've got policy-based messages. In each of these messages, one and only one idea should be conveyed. And that's in the interest of keeping it short and keeping it simple. Keeping it short and keeping it simple, make sure that people will hear it and that they won't misunderstand it. And to help with that, each policy-based message might have one and only one idea. Now, in a presentation, you might convey multiple policy messages, or if you're doing a radio ad or a web page, you're going to have multiple policy messages. But make sure that each message deals with one idea and only one. An example, we need school choice to put our schools back into the hands of parents. Okay, that's a policy-based message, and it provides information about what that policy would be and what the reason for doing it is. We need school choice. That's the policy, so we can put schools back into the hands of our parents. That's the why. This is an abbreviated example. You do want to keep it short, but this gives you an idea of what a policy-based message is. Then you've got character-based messages. These are messages that focus on a person's character, their past, their qualifications, and what skills they may have that shows that they are fit for the office they are running for, or if you are lobbying a legislator, or if you're pushing a ballot measure campaign, they say why you as the messenger or your organization or people running the organization are fit to be involved with that, and something that offers credibility to the source of the message and the message itself. So one example might be, John Doe has the courage, experience, and character to put us back on track. That's an abbreviated sort of message, and it shows that John Doe has those personal characteristics and that John Doe is an appropriate person to be running for that office. And then the fourth kind of message that we're dealing with today are value-based messages. These are messages which relate to social values being advanced by your campaign. And again, this campaign can be an election campaign, or it can be a campaign to pass a bill or an ordinance or a policy or a ballot measure. So, there are lots of different kinds of campaigns. Each of them requires good messaging. And in your case, Carrie, I'm sure that you recognize that as an as an incumbent school board member with a couple of years left in your term, that the policies that come before you, which are controversial in nature, all require good messaging. And it's good to have all of these kinds of messages related to the policies that are important. Okay, we've got Loretta Johnson joining us. And so an example of An abbreviated example of, hi Loretta, welcome. Um, an abbreviated example of a value-based message would be, vote John Doe or Jane Doe because government should serve the people, not the other way around. You know, that's expressing a value. The value in this case that the government serves the people. It can be anything, because free speech is important. Because if you're motivated by faith, it could be because God should not be out of the public square, or whatever it is. You've got the value-based messages. So the four kinds of messages that I'm dealing with here is your core message, central to everything you do, the reason why you're running for office or the reason why you're advocating a policy. Your policy-based messages, which is a message about whatever policy you are advocating, that each policy-based message should deal with one and only one idea, which means you're going to have multiple policy-based messages. Then you've got the character-based messages, the ones that are that make it clear that the source of the message or the candidate is qualified and credible to run for that office or to advocate that position. And then the value-based message, which I just went over. You came in just a little late, Loretta, so I want to remind you that if you want to catch the portion of this training that you missed, you can come back and go to the training tab of the westernlibertynetwork.org website, and that'll be posted in a couple of hours, so you'll be able to get that pretty soon.
Awesome, thank you.
Yep, no problem. Loretta, forgive me, are you a candidate?
No, I'm not. I'm helping some people though, and so that's why I thought I'd listen in.
Well, that's great. I mean, candidates and issue advocates all need good advice on messaging, and so I hope that this will have some value for you. Components of good messaging. I'd like to point out that nothing guarantees that political messaging will work in the ways that you want them to. But if your messaging includes all of the things that I'm going to discuss here, it will be much more effective. Your messaging will be much more effective than if it does not include the things here. The first point, and probably the most obvious point, is that your messages should be clear and concise. Attention spans are very short. They're short for everyone because, although the campaign that you are working on or the issue that you are working on might be taking most of your time, the average voter or the average lawmaker that you might be trying to lobby has all kinds of campaigns, pummeling them for attention. And most Americans don't spend a lot of time thinking about politics anyway. And then, of course, they've got their other problems. So you've got to keep your message very short, or else it's going to get lost. One line, two lines, for a basic message. And what I'd like to do is I like to have one or two taglines that contain a message right at the beginning, right at the start, and find out if your audience wants to know more. If they want to know more, they will ask you. And if they ask you, then you can go into more detail. Other than that, most voters are satisfied just getting a one or two line summary of the idea you are trying to convey. And you want to make sure that you are very clear, that it cannot be misunderstood. I think a famous British tutor once said, if you do not say what you mean, you will never mean what you say. And one example might be if you're talking about subjective terms, you want to minimize the use of subjective terms in your policy messaging in particular. More subjective messages is good for value messaging and character-based messaging, but you want to be very clear about policy-based messages. If you're talking about employment or unemployment, you might have to deal with the fact that there's the U3 number, which talks about people who are unemployed but actively seeking a job, or the U6 number, which includes discouraged workers, people who don't want to look for a job, those kinds of things. Now, you're not going to use U2 or U6, but the point is you're going to say very clearly, unemployment is at 6.3%. And if they challenge you on the number, back your number up. That's when you get the chance to say more. But unemployment is at 6.3%. We need to open our economy. That might be a message that you can use. You might even get more specific than that. But the point is, your message needs to be very clear, very simple, very concise. The second thing is that you need an effective messenger. Sometimes the candidate is not the best person to deliver a message. For example, if you are working for a candidate and someone throws an accusation at your candidate, the accusation being that the candidate did something shady or did something corrupt, the candidate's going to need to be able to defend himself or herself, no question about it. But the most effective messenger in that case may not always be the candidate denying whatever accusation is being made in this example. In this example, it could be another office holder or someone with a good reputation that is known in the community that issues a press release or goes on the radio and says something like, oh, this, I've been around politics for a long time and I've known Jane Doe for a long time, and I know that these accusations are politically motivated and false. Somebody like that who has credibility and who is not the candidate is oftentimes going to have more credibility than the candidate themselves. So you need to consider your audience, but you also need to consider the message and who is the best person or what is the best means by which a message can be delivered. Sometimes the means are important too. If the topic is about something else or one particular demographic is impacted, like if there's an issue as to whether to lower the voting age to 16, and you might have more young people paying attention to that than old people, you might want to use a platform like SMS or Twitter. For others, you might want to issue a press release to the Bend Bulletin or the Source or whatever your local newspaper is. So you need to know who the effective messenger will be in any given case and what are the appropriate platforms for the people you are trying to reach with the message you have at hand. Likewise, if you're talking about a school issue, it might be more useful for a professional educator to provide a message than the executive director of a political action committee. It's just, the person who is running a campaign does not always have to be and should not always be the person delivering the message, depending on the message. So I think I've beaten that to death. Another component that all messaging should have is some kind of a call to action. You're going to ask them to do something. For example, you might use phrases in your messaging like, be part of a better future. Okay, that invites them, the audience, to participate in some way, even if it means just voting for you or supporting a policy in a legislative committee or something like that. Another phrase, with your help, we can pass this proposal which promises to help our state so much. The whole thing, with your help. It's important to issue some kind of a call to action with your messaging. And I have to say that, there's a lot in this. And it's sometimes hard to reconcile with the fact that your messaging needs to be short and needs to be concise. And that if you have elements that aren't there, it might not be an effective message. But if you put all the elements there, your message could be lost. Some just genius, some ingenious examples of messaging are like Ronald Reagan's "It's Morning in America." Think about what that conveys. Because it is coming from a campaign, it is suggestive of a beginning, it is suggestive of a positive future. And because we're all Americans, it is suggestive of everyone being a part of that. It's Morning in America is a good, maybe an example of a good core message that justifies a campaign. On the liberal side, Barack Obama had a good one. Yes, we can. Brilliant messaging. Anything is possible. Yes, we can, meaning it includes all of us, including you. It has all of the components that a good messaging statement should have. And a messaging statement, it can sometimes be very short like that. Sometimes messaging can overlap with slogans. And that's okay as long as the slogan conveys, a message. It's Morning in America, Yes We Can, are all really good examples of good messaging. One example of commercial messaging I think is very clever was Alka-Seltzer's old commercial. I don't know if they use it anymore, but they used to have a commercial campaign that went plop, plop, fizz, fizz, oh, what a relief it is. And my father pointed out to me what genius this was, because if you have indigestion and need Alka-Seltzer, you don't need to use 2 tablets. You can just use 1. And that'll do the job in almost every case. But the commercial plop, plop, fizz, fizz implies that you need to use 2 and, effectively double the consumption and therefore sales of Alka-Seltzer. It's amazing how something so simple can contain so much. Plop, plop, fizz, fizz, oh, what a relief it is. Use 2 tablets, not 1, and you will get relief. And amazing what great relief it is. It's just, if you use your words carefully, you can pack a lot of overt and subliminal information into a message, whether it's a core message, a policy-based message, a character-based message, or a value-based message. You need to just not think of slogans, think of what it is you're trying to say, what it is you're trying to convey, and then really think creatively about how you can wedge so many ideas into as few words as possible to convey a clear idea that is consistent with your core message. And again, once again, I repeat this, make your goals short, clear, and simple. Okay. For example, if you're talking about a policy idea and you want to bring government schools back to a place where they're focusing on academics, you can sum it up by saying, my ideas will improve academic achievement and economic opportunity. You're simply putting into a policy goal, a goal, and it's short and it's clear. Not nearly as eloquent as plop, plop, fizz, fizz, or yes, we can, or Morning in America, but those kinds of ideas are rare, and you sometimes need to use a few more words than that. But don't use any more than you have to. Make sure you're clear, make sure it's short. And it's good for the candidate to have information in case people want to dig deeper and ask more questions, but you should always have the headline at the top and be prepared to stop at the headline, but also be prepared to go deeper if someone asks, more questions. There are a few other tips I like to promote. First one is use emotion. Often an emotionally compelling story will outweigh data. I've seen it happen in legislative hearings all the time. I remember going to a charter school bill hearing, and a parent was up there, and of course the legislative committee had already had other legislators speak, and they've had statistics, and they had lawyers, and they had sociologists, and all of these other things, and they provided a lot of data, which could provide cover for a politician to vote in any way they wanted to, basically. And that's why they do that. At a legislative committee, sometimes they will bring forth so-called experts, and sometimes they are experts, to provide a rationale so that they have to say later, boy, I didn't really want to vote for this thing, but the lawyer said we had to, and the scientists said we had to, and the statistician said we had to. And so while I'm sympathetic to what you're saying, the data just was overwhelming. Okay, this is a lot of the reason why they sometimes do this. But if you have a really emotional message, you can sometimes overcome that, because no politician wants to be seen squashing an average citizen when they're on camera, when it's being recorded, when it's on the record. And I saw that parent say, you know, I understand what everybody is saying, and I know you have to weigh it, but I'll just tell you about my daughter. My daughter was gifted, but she wasn't challenged. So she caused a lot of problems in school. She started acting up. She was bored. And then she got with the wrong kids. And then she started mouthing off at home. And we had all kinds of problems. She got arrested. She got caught with cigarettes, whatever it is. But then we got her into this charter school. She was challenged for the first time. She got away from the old people, and now she made new friends, nice friends. And the mouthing off at home has stopped, and she's doing well in school again. If you pass this bill, I'll have to put her back into the government schools and put her back into that environment. Please do not do that to my daughter. Please do not do that to my family. This was incredibly compelling. And on that particular day, where I think they were about ready to kill the charter school bill, they ended up tabling it for another day. And it ultimately passed. I think it was Senate Bill 100 back in the day. So my point here is that emotional appeals, do not underestimate the impact of emotional appeals. When it comes down to logic, they often have very little weight. But when it comes down to political logic, they're often can steamroll 100 lawyers. So keep your message, have your logic, but make sure that you appeal to people's feelings, and you'll do much better than if you do not appeal to their feelings. The second tip is include your audience. When you're messaging, when you're projecting your messages, whenever possible, use words like we, together, and us. Don't use too many I's and me's. Sometimes you need to use them. Please vote for me on election day and I will do this. But whenever possible, talk about how you, along with everyone, us, we, will solve these problems, how we have this opportunity, how we cannot let this opportunity pass us by. Make them a part of your efforts and allow them to understand that if you win, that they will share the benefits of that victory, and your messaging will be much more successful. Also, do your best to relate to your audience. If you seem distant and unreachable and in a different world, or if you come off as an elite, you're going to lose your audience. So you want to make sure that you convey your message in such a way that the audience believes that you are one of them and that you are on their side. Channel 2 uses this. K2 News, on your side. Investigative reporting, on your side. This is all very clever stuff. It makes them relatable, like you, KATU is an asset to your life because they're on your side, protecting you from all kinds of consumer scams or whatever it is. It's brilliant messaging. And again, it's very short. K2 Investigative News, on your side. It just conveys a lot of ideas in a very short statement. Use words that your audience uses. Do not use jargon. If you are a public official, or if you're a technician, or you're a lawyer, or anything like that, you have your own professional jargon, and you're so used to using it. And I found this myself when I was a computer network consultant. A lot of computer jargon. You use it so much with people you work with, and you read about it in magazines, that it just becomes part of your natural vocabulary. But if you use jargon too much with an audience that does not have your background, you will lose them very quickly. Okay. Technical terms. What's a good example for a technical term? Like certain indexes of academic achievement. Unless you are asked a specific question about it, do not refer to specific indexes of academic achievement. Just tell people what the index says. That competency in math and science is going up for second and third graders, but dropping for everybody else. Okay, so, tell them what it means to them. And that again goes to include your audience. And then the final point I have here is, and this sort of embraces everything else that I've said today, is whatever you do in your messaging, make sure that you are authentic. Make sure that you are always authentic. Most candidates and issue advocates who try to be something that they're not, or try to shine on people or BS them, they are ratted out very fast by even the most simplest voters. They don't know how to put their finger on it, but they can sense if you're not being authentic. And I think one of the reasons for that is because today, with the toxic politics that we have now, there is a real hunger for authenticity. And this gives us a real good chance to offer authenticity through our messaging. And, you know, if after you are done with your messaging suite, you've sat down with your candidate or your committee, whatever it is you're doing. Let's see, I gotta find something here. Just take a look at all of the messages that you're planning to project and ask yourself, does this seem authentic? Does this feel real? Are people going to see this as authentic? And, you know, if it doesn't pass the smell test in every case, tweak it or get rid of it or replace it. Authenticity is something that people are very hungry for. So just to sort of summarize here, this is about political messaging. And in this presentation, I've broken down messaging into 4 kinds of messages: your core message, policy-based messages, character-based messages, value-based messages. Talked about the components of good messaging, the fact that they should be clear and concise, how whoever delivers your message needs to be an effective and credible messenger. Your messaging should include some kind of a call to action, even if it's an implied call to action. And you should make your goals very clear and very short and very simple. Finally, use emotion in your messaging wherever you can. Include your audience. It's also very good to identify your audience. What demographic are you speaking to? What kind of voters are you speaking to? Make sure that as you convey your message, you are doing it in a way that is relatable to the audience. And above all, make sure that what you are saying will come off to them as authentic. And if you do that, your political messaging will be much more effective than if it is not. So that is my presentation. I have just posted a PDF document containing all this information into the chat window. It'll also be available for download when this is posted, but you can pull this down and share it with whoever you think might find it of value. With that, I'd like to ask each of you if you have any thoughts or any questions, ideas, things, you know, in your experience that maybe I left out, or anything of that sort. No? Go ahead, Carrie.
I just had, of course, my dog decides to bark right at the same time I turn my.
I have a German Shepherd too, so I understand.
Oh my God. I just was gonna say something that happened. Sorry. Something that happens often when I'm in certain situations, in meetings and whatnot, is people use acronyms that I have no idea what they stand for, so I have to ask. So that would be just another thing that I would caution people to avoid.
Yeah, that goes kind of into the whole jargon bit. You want to use terms that your audience knows. Saul Alinsky, who wrote Rules for Radicals, it's sort of a guidebook for the left.
Right, yeah.
Some of those lessons are valuable to limited government activists too. And one of his lessons were, you know, do not, you know, as you lead, but as you lead, do not go so far that you are invisible past the horizon as to what the people following you can see. And using a lot of acronyms, you're going to lose the audience because, like you, they won't know what it means either.
Right.
So make sure that you, if you must use an acronym, make sure you're clear as to what it stands for. but I try to avoid acronyms when possible and just use, instead of NAACP, National Association for the Advancement of Color People. If you use that 1 or 2 times, you might say also known as the NAACP. So then the next time you say it, they know what you're talking about. But that's a very good point, Carrie. Thank you for bringing that up. Do you have anything, Loretta?
No, I don't. Thank you very much.
Okay, very good. Well, with that, unless there's anything else for the good of the order, we're going to call it a training session. We got in at 40 minutes, and so this will be posted on the training tab of the westernlibertynetwork.org website within the next couple of hours. So thank you very much, and God bless.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.